The sun sank low over Port Harlan, a fictional Rust Belt city where the ghosts of better days lingered in the rusted skeletons of steel mills and the cracked asphalt of forgotten streets. A chilly 40-degree rough breeze swept through the industrial west side, carrying the scent of fried dough from a food truck parked 200 yards away, its flickering neon sign casting a warm glow against the twilight. Across the street, the Port Harlan diner hummed with life, its red and white checkered sign buzzing faintly, promising hot coffee and apple pie to locals huddled inside. The distant roar of a college football tailgate party echoed from Main Street, where Port Harlan State fans cheered under floodlights, their voices rising like a heartbeat in the fading light. This was a city of grit and pride, where smokestacks stood like tombstones, and every corner told a story of struggle and stubborn hope. Keanu Reeves walked alone through this quiet stretch, his boots tapping softly against the uneven sidewalk. No entourage, no flash. Just a man in a worn denim jacket and a faded baseball cap pulled low over his brow, blending into the shadows of a place that didn't care for Hollywood glitz. His hands were tucked into his pockets, shielding them from the crisp evening air, and a faint smile played on his lips, the kind that came from a long day well spent. Keanu had just left the West Side Community Center, where he'd spent hours mentoring kids in a youth arts program he funded out of pocket. It wasn't the kind of work that made headlines, no red carpets, no paparazzi, but it was the kind that made sense to him. At 60, Keanu had long since traded the spotlight for moments like these, where a kid's shy sketch or halting poem could shift the world just a little. Port Harlan suited him. It was far from the polished boulevards of Los Angeles, far from the boutiques and tourist traps of downtown. Here, the streets were raw, lined with shuttered factories and chain-link fences, the air thick with a tang of oil and metal. A Springsteen song crackled faintly from a radio in a parked pickup truck, its gritty chords blending with the hum of a distant freight train. Keanu liked the anonymity of places like this, where no one looked twice at a man in a denim jacket unless he gave them a reason to. He didn't. He never did. Just minutes earlier, he'd paused near a Dunkin' Donuts, its pink and orange sign glowing like a beacon in the dusk. A homeless teen, no older than 16, sat cross-legged on a cardboard sheet, her backpack worn thin. Keanu crouched down, his voice soft. "Cold out here," he said, slipping a $20 bill into her hand. "Get something warm." The girl blinked, startled, then nodded, clutching the bill like it was a lifeline. "Thanks, mister," she mumbled. But Keanu was already walking away, his cap casting a shadow over his face. The moment was small, unnoticed by the world, but it was Keanu at his core. Quiet kindness, no strings attached. Now, as he cut through a narrow side street to avoid the traffic on Jefferson Avenue, his steps were steady, unhurried. The street was flanked by a boarded-up auto shop and a construction site, its cranes looming like silent giants against the orange-streaked sky. Ahead stood the West Side Community Center, a squat concrete building ringed with a 50-foot chain-link fence, its faded sign promising after-school programs and job fairs. The center was a lifeline for Port Harlan's kids, but lately it had been a target, vandalized twice in a month, leaving its staff on edge. Outside the center's open gate, 2 security guards lingered, their navy uniforms stamped with the city's seal. Marcus Tate, stocky and in his mid-40s, leaned against a lamppost, his flashlight dangling from his belt. His face was hard, etched with the strain of 12-hour shifts and budget cuts that had slashed the center's funding. Beside him, Eli Vaughn, younger and wiry, puffed on a vape pen, his eyes scanning the street with a restless energy. They were off-duty, but carried the weight of authority, their postures wide and commanding, as if the sidewalk itself belonged to them. Keanu didn't look their way, but they noticed him. "Hey, buddy," Marcus called, his voice sharp, cutting through the evening's quiet. "This ain't your street. Where you headed?" Keanu kept walking, his pace unchanged, his hands still in his pockets. He'd learned long ago that silence was safer than confrontation, that it could diffuse or provoke depending on who was watching. Marcus's eyes narrowed, his smirk tinged with challenge. "Yo, you hear me?" Eli added, stepping forward, his vape cloud curling into the air. "You lost or just stupid?" Keanu stopped, his boots planted on the cracked sidewalk. He lifted his head, meeting their gazes with a calm that felt almost dangerous. "Evening," he said, his voice low, gravelly but steady. Marcus tilted his head, sizing him up. "Evening? You sound like you're in some old western." Eli laughed, sharp and mocking. "Nah, he thinks he's somebody. Look at that jacket, like he's hiding something." The air shifted, heavy with the weight of their assumptions. To them, Keanu was just a stranger, maybe a drifter, maybe trouble, in a neighborhood where outsiders were suspect. Port Harlan's west side had been tense lately, caught in a cycle of crime and cutbacks that left everyone on edge. Marcus and Eli, worn down by long hours and a community center struggling to stay afloat, saw Keanu's silence as defiance, his plain clothes as proof he didn't belong. They didn't know who he was. They didn't care. But in that moment, on that cold, quiet street, a single spark was about to ignite something bigger than any of them could imagine. Keanu Reeves was just trying to get home when everything changed. What happened next wasn't just about one man. It sparked a movement born from a clash of power and kindness, captured by a single lens, that would shake Port Harlan to its core and remind a nation what respect really means. Stay with us. You won't believe what unfolded under the flickering lights of a city fighting to rise again. Keanu Reeves walked past the Westside Community Center, its concrete walls looming under the dim glow of a flickering streetlight. A 50-foot chain-link fence, topped with barbed wire, encircled the building, a stark reminder of recent vandalism that had left Port Harlan's west side on edge. Marcus Tate, a stocky security guard in his mid-40s, leaned against a rusted gate, his Navy uniform creased from a 12-hour shift. Budget cuts had slashed the center's funding, leaving Marcus bitter, his eyes scanning every passerby as a potential threat. Beside him, Eli Vaughn, younger and brash, fidgeted with a flashlight, eager to prove himself in a neighborhood where respect was hard-won. The air was tense, thick with the hum of a distant freight train and the faint scent of oil from a nearby factory. "Hey, buddy, this ain't your street," Marcus barked, his voice cutting through the 40-degree of evening chill. He mistook Keanu, in his worn denim jacket and baseball cap, for a loiterer casing the center. Keanu paused, his boots steady on the cracked sidewalk. "Just heading home," he said, his voice calm, measured, like a man who'd faced worse storms. Eli stepped forward, waving his flashlight in Keanu's face, its beam harsh against the twilight. "Looking shady, man. What's in those pockets?" he sneered, his bravado masking the stress of a job that paid too little for too much. Marcus and Eli, worn down by long shifts and a community center struggling to stay afloat, saw Keanu's silence as defiance. In Port Harlan, strangers were suspect, and the guard's frustration boiled over. "You gonna answer?" Eli snapped, his hand dropping to the pepper spray on his belt. Keanu's eyes, steady beneath his cap, met Eli's. "I'm not your problem," he said softly, his restraint a quiet strength that went unnoticed. Eli's face twisted. "Not our problem? You're everybody's problem." Without warning, he unleashed a cloud of pepper spray, the stinging mist hitting Keanu's face like 1,000 needles. Keanu stumbled back, coughing, his eyes burning as he shielded his face with one hand. The pain was sharp, relentless, but he didn't shout or swing. His body tensed, yet his composure held, a calculated stillness that spoke louder than anger. Gasping through the sting, he rasped, "You don't know who I am, but you will." His voice, ragged but firm, cut through the guard's laughter. Marcus smirked, unfazed. "What, you some drifter with a story?" But something in Keanu's unwavering gaze, a storm behind the calm, made Eli's flashlight waver, just for a moment, as the weight of their mistake began to dawn. Across the street from the Westside Community Center, 17-year-old Sofia Alvarez froze, her heart pounding like a drum against the 40-degree chill. She'd been walking home from a late shift at the Port Harlan diner, her backpack slung over one shoulder, when she saw Keanu Reeves, her mentor, the man who'd funded her theater group, stumbling under a cloud of pepper spray. Sofia knew Keanu's face, not from movie posters, but from quiet afternoons at the community center, where his Safe Streets Alliance had given her a stage when her high school slashed arts funding. That stage had turned her from a shy kid into a confident performer. And now, 200 yards away, she watched Marcus Tate and Eli Vaughn laugh as Keanu coughed, his denim jacket soaked with sweat and spray. Sofia ducked behind a parked Ford pickup, its tailgate plastered with Port Harlan State football stickers. Her hands shook, but her resolve didn't. She'd read about Parkland students and young activists like Greta Thunberg, kids her age who turned moments into movements. This was her moment. Fumbling with her phone, she hit record, capturing Eli's mocking grin and Marcus's flashlight beam as they taunted Keanu. "You don't know who I am," Keanu rasped, his voice steady despite the sting. "But you will." Sofia's lens caught every word, every cruel laugh, the chain-link fence glinting 50 feet behind them. Her hands trembled as she uploaded the video to X, her fingers typing a caption, "Security guards, pepper spray a man for walking home." He warned them. They didn't listen. She hesitated, then hit post. Within minutes, notifications flooded her screen. By the time Keanu struggled to his feet, wiping his burning eyes, the video had hit 100,000 views in 30 minutes. Comments poured in, "That's Keanu Reeves." They sprayed him for nothing. Port Harlan's a mess. Sofia's heart raced. She hadn't just filmed an attack. She'd lit a spark. Marcus noticed her, his smirk fading. "Hey, kid, you filming?" he shouted, stepping toward the truck. Sofia's breath caught, but she held her ground, phone steady. "It's already online," she said, her voice quivering but firm. Eli's flashlight dropped slightly, his bravado cracking. "Delete it now," he snapped, but Sofia shook her head. "It's on X. Thousands are watching." The guards froze, the weight of their actions sinking in as Keanu stood tall, his gaze unwavering. Sofia's video wasn't just evidence. It was a call to action, echoing across Port Harlan and beyond, proving one teen's courage could shift the tide against injustice. Keanu Reeves stood on the cracked sidewalk outside the Westside Community Center, his denim jacket clinging to his frame, soaked with sweat and the lingering sting of pepper spray. The 40-degree air bit at his skin as he wiped his burning eyes, tears streaming from the chemical assault rather than fear. Marcus Tate and Eli Vaughn, the security guards who'd mistaken him for a loiterer, stood frozen, their laughter silenced by Sofia Alvarez's bold declaration. From across the street, her video was live on X, already viral at 100,000 views. The 50-foot chain-link fence behind them glinted under a flickering streetlight, a silent witness to the unfolding reckoning. Keanu's gaze, steady despite the pain, locked onto Marcus, then Eli, his silence louder than their earlier taunts. With a slow, deliberate motion, Keanu reached into his jacket pocket, pulling out a waterlogged ID card, its edges curling from the damp. He held it up, his voice low but unwavering. "I'm Keanu Reeves," he said, "founder of the Safe Streets Alliance, the program funding your community center." The words landed like a thunderclap in the quiet Port Harlan night. Marcus's flashlight dropped to his side, his stocky frame rigid. Eli's vape pen hung limp in his hand, his brash smirk replaced by a dawning horror. They'd just attacked the man who financed their ethics training. the very program keeping the center's doors open for kids in this struggling Rust Belt city. Keanu's eyes, red from the spray, held no anger, only a quiet resolve that cut deeper than any shout. "I started the Safe Streets Alliance because of a friend," he continued, his tone steady, almost gentle. "Back in the 90s, I watched overzealous security guards rough him up for no reason, just for being in the wrong place. I believe training could rebuild trust, could make places like Port Harlan safer." He nodded toward the center, its faded sign promising hope amid budget cuts. "Your training, your jobs, they exist because of that belief," Marcus muttered. "No way," his voice thin, more hope than defiance. Eli's face paled, his earlier bravado crumbling. Keanu's humility, his refusal to boast or threaten, made the revelation hit harder. He wasn't just a celebrity. He was the man who'd poured millions into reforming community safety, trusting men like them to serve, not intimidate. The weight of their mistake settled like the 200-yard distant factory smoke. Sophia's phone, still recording behind the Ford pickup, captured every word, her video now spreading truth faster than the pepper spray had burned. Keanu's quiet strength wasn't just resilience. It was a mirror, reflecting the guards' failure and igniting a movement that Port Harlan and the nation would soon feel. The video Sofia Alvarez posted to X spread like wildfire across Port Harlan's digital landscape, its 100,000 views in 30 minutes exploding to 1 million by midnight. Comments flooded in under the 40-degree off night sky. "That's Keanu Reeves. He funds their center Port Harlan guards are a disgrace." The raw footage of Keanu, eyes red from pepper spray, revealing his role as founder of the Safe Streets Alliance, struck a nerve. By dawn, local news stations aired the clip on loop, with ESPN and TMZ amplifying the story nationwide. Keanu Reeves pepper sprayed by guards he funds. The headlines captured not just the attack, but Keanu's quiet strength, his refusal to shout or strike back, a humility that mirrored American ideals of resilience without ego. Port Harlan's residents didn't just watch, they acted. Within hours, a diverse coalition, teachers, veterans, students, organized a Walk for Respect, a 3-mile march from the West Side Community Center to the neon-lit Port Harlan Diner 200 yards away. Over 500 locals joined, their signs reading "Respect runs deeper" and "No honor, no badge." Maria Gonzalez, a high school teacher, carried a banner. "Keanu gave my kids a stage. We stand with him." Jamal Carter, a Vietnam veteran, marched beside her, saying, "I've seen power abused. This ends now." The march raised $20,000 for the Safe Streets Alliance, funds to expand Keanu's ethics training for community safety officers. Local businesses rallied too. At the Port Harlan Diner, owner Linda Hayes hung a sign, "Keanu's coffee free today." By noon, 100 cups had been poured, each one a quiet tribute to the man who'd slipped $20 to a homeless teen the night before. Across town, security guards from other centers, shamed by Marcus Tate and Eli Vaughn's actions, pledged to adopt Keanu's ethics training, with one posting on X, "We're better than this. Keanu's program is our guide." The community's unity, born from shared outrage and admiration for Keanu's restraint, reflected America's love for collective action. Neighbors banding together to right a wrong. The video's ripple effect reached beyond Port Harlan. National outlets like CNN ran segments, from actor to advocate Keanu's stand against abuse. On X, a hashtag, #MarRespectRuns deeper, trended, with users sharing stories of unchecked power in their own towns. A college student in Ohio wrote, "Keanu's silence spoke louder than their spray." Port Harlan became a symbol, its rusted mills and vibrant diner a backdrop for a movement. Keanu, true to his quiet nature, said nothing publicly, letting the community's voice roar, a testament to his humility and the American spirit of standing tall together. The fallout from Sofia Alvarez's viral video hit the West Side Community Center like a 40-degree gust, through Port Harlan's rusted streets. By noon, the center's director suspended Marcus Tate and Eli Vaughn, their Navy uniforms stripped of authority, as the 50-foot chain-link fence outside stood as a silent witness to their shame. Marcus, the stocky guard worn down by budget cuts, sat in his pickup truck 200 yards away, staring at the dashboard, replaying Keanu Reeves' words, "You don't know who I am, but you will." His career, built on years of late shifts, was over. He resigned that afternoon, his letter curt, his regret unspoken but heavy, etched in the slump of his shoulders. Eli, the brash younger guard, clung to defiance until a petition with 5,000 signatures, circulated on X by Port Harlan residents, demanded accountability. He was fired, his badge revoked, leaving him to face a future without the job he'd once flaunted. The community center faced an independent audit, its records combed for ignored complaints and lapses in oversight. Keanu, true to his quiet strength, took decisive action without raising his voice. From his modest apartment, still drying from the pepper spray sting, he announced the Safe Streets Alliance would freeze funding to the center until reforms were proven. More than that, he mandated civilian oversight boards for all funded programs, requiring residents and former victims of authority abuse to sit alongside officials. "Trust isn't given, it's earned," he said in a brief statement, his humility echoing American values of fairness and accountability. Within months, the Safe Streets Alliance's civilian boards were adopted by 10 cities, from Cleveland to Oakland, sparking a national debate on reforming community safety practices. Port Harlan's story became a blueprint, its 3-mile walk for respect, a rallying cry for change. Marcus's regret lingered in the silence of his truck, where he scrolled through X, reading comments that branded him a bully. He'd seen Keanu as a nobody, not the man who funded hope for Port Harlan's kids. Eli, meanwhile, paced his apartment, his bravado shattered, haunted by the video's million views. Their actions weren't excused. Pepper spraying Keanu was a choice born of arrogance, but their remorse added a human layer to their downfall. The center, once a beacon, now bore the weight of their mistake, its faded sign a reminder of trust broken. Keanu's response, measured yet firm, showed power didn't need a shout to shift systems. As Port Harlan's diner poured free coffee in his name, the guards' careers ended. But a movement began, proving one man's stand could reshape a city's soul. A week after the pepper spray incident that shook Port Harlan, Keanu Reeves sat in the back row of a dimly lit community theater, 200 yards from the West Side Community Center's chain-link fence. The stage, funded by his Safe Streets Alliance, glowed under soft spotlights as Sofia Alvarez, the 17-year-old who'd filmed his stand against Marcus Tate and Eli Vaughn, took her place in a youth theater performance. Her voice, once timid, now carried a poem about resilience, each word a testament to the confidence Keanu's program had nurtured. The 40-degree evening breeze slipped through an open window, carrying the faint scent of fried dough from a food truck parked outside, a reminder of the gritty, hopeful pulse of this Rust Belt city. Keanu, in a simple black hoodie and jeans, watched silently, his eyes tracing Sofia's movements. No one in the audience recognized him. No cameras, no crowds. Just a man reflecting on a moment that had changed everything. In that quiet theater, Keanu's thoughts drifted to why he kept fighting for change. "One moment of cruelty can't stop a lifetime of kindness," he murmured to himself, the words a mantra born from years of giving without fanfare. He thought of the homeless teen he'd handed $20 to near the Dunkin' Donuts, of the kids like Sophia who found their voice through his programs, and of the friend in the 90s whose mistreatment by security guards had sparked the Safe Streets Alliance. That friend's pain, mirrored in Keanu's own burning eyes that night, wasn't just a wound. It was a call to action. His restraint against Marcus and Eli, his refusal to shout or strike back, wasn't weakness. But a lesson, true strength, lies in standing tall, not tearing down. It was a lesson Port Harlan was learning, and one he hoped would echo beyond its rusted mills. Outside the community center, a mural had risen, a vibrant symbol of change painted against the concrete wall. Keanu's silhouette stood against Port Harlan's skyline, smokestacks and neon diners under a twilight glow, with the words, "Respect runs deeper," in bold, flowing script. It was the kind of public art Americans cherished, like Shepard Fairey's iconic murals, a visual shout of defiance and hope. Below it, a bronze plaque read, "Here stood those who forgot to serve." Here rose a reminder that one voice can change the path. The mural, unveiled during the 3-mile Walk for Respect that raised $20,000 for the Safe Streets Alliance, wasn't Keanu's idea. He'd never asked for a memorial, but the community insisted, their brushes and voices turning his quiet stand into a beacon. Local artist Jamal Carter, a Vietnam veteran who'd marched with a sign that day, called it a mirror for Port Harlan's soul. The impact stretched far beyond that 50-foot fence. The Safe Streets Alliance's civilian oversight boards, mandated by Keanu after the incident, were adopted by 10 cities within months, from Cleveland to Oakland, sparking a national debate on reforming community safety. Port Harlan's Diner, still offering Keanu's coffee free today, became a hub for discussions, where teachers like Maria Gonzalez and students shared stories of unchecked power. On X, the hashtag #respect runs deeper trended for weeks, with posts like, "Keanu stood for us all," and "Port Harlan showed me one voice matters." ESPN and CNN ran follow-ups, "Keanu Reeves' stand ignites reform." The city, once defined by rusted mills, now stood for something bigger. A reminder that respect isn't optional, a lesson rooted in American ideals of justice and collective action. Keanu's reflection in the theater taught him another truth: change doesn't need a spotlight, but it demands courage. His silence that night, broken only by a warning to Marcus and Eli, showed that power isn't in volume but in purpose. The guard's regret, Marcus in his silent truck, Eli pacing his apartment, proved that actions ripple, for better or worse. For Keanu, the deeper lesson was about trust in communities, in kindness, in the idea that one moment can shift a system. Sophia's courage, filming behind that Ford pickup, was proof. A single spark could light a movement. He also learned resilience isn't just enduring pain, but turning it into progress, a value Americans hold dear in stories of underdogs rising. To you, the audience, Keanu's story is a gift we share with gratitude. Thank you for standing with us for reading, for caring about a city like Port Harlan and a man like Keanu. Your support fuels this tale's reach, from the neon glow of a diner to screens across the nation. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Join us to keep these lessons alive. Share your thoughts. Have you ever been judged for how you walk, where you're from, or how quietly you move? Stand tall, speak out, support reform in your town. Share this story. One step can start a movement. Keanu left the theater as Sophia took her bow, slipping out into the 40-degree off night, unnoticed. He didn't need applause. His legacy was in the kids on stage, the mural's bold lines, the plaque's quiet truth. Port Harlan had changed, not because Keanu was famous, but because he proved respect could reshape a city's heart. One voice, one stand, one act of kindness at a time. That's the American way, and that's how a movement begins.